I think the glorification of soldiers is a continuous conveyor belt that churns out militaries that are blinded by the delusions of patriotism. Soldiers are the main fuel for a warlike world in which we live in that claims soldiers to be the bastions of defense, when in the end of the day, these are individuals who kill and who will attack other nations just like any other kinds of soldiers around the world. We don't think these people deserve any form of special recognition, especially since these people are one of the leading actors of wars all around the world. We have 4 things to prove to you today in today's debate, right? Number 1, how does this glorification actually look like? Secondly, how does it create a bad incentive, especially for poor, underprivileged individuals? Number 3, how it also harms veterans, even in their best case scenario. And 4, how does it fuel a never-ending cycle of war? So the stakeholders in today's debate, the 3 most important ones, number 1 are the states, number 2 are people on the fence who have yet to realize whether or not they want to be soldiers or not, and number 3, poor individuals who are coerced into becoming a soldier, right? So the premise of our entire argument is that we don't believe that we think that soldiers should be held accountable for every single thing that they do. But with the kind of glorification that happens on your side, these kinds of check and balance system doesn't occur. So the first substantive coming from our side, how does this glorification actually look like? This manifests in one of 2 ways. The first level, military propaganda, right? Because this is what government will tell individuals. Number 1, it manifests through education, right? Because you don't tell them the repercussions of war or being a soldier, right? It's less of an informed choice, because when you attend like civics lessons, like your teacher will tell you that being a soldier is the ultimate sacrifice that you must do in the name of patriotism, right? And this is extremely harmful because you push the narrative to individuals, especially those who are mildly patriotic. You tell them that in order to be loyal, you must take up the you must take up the burden of being a soldier, and that's the best virtue of all to be a citizen, right? Secondly, through media, right? Because there's so many movies out there like Independence Day or like American Sniper that tells children, especially young children, that if you are a soldier and you are someone who will be glorified, then you are the hero of the world and you're gonna fight all these kinds of aliens, right? And this is extremely harmful. Why is it so? We take the precedence of Chris Kyle, right? Because he was a sniper that was active in the invasion of Afghanistan, and like all these kinds of movies painted him to be a bastion of like defense, an American hero. But in the end of the day, no one actually wanted to talk about how he was a murderous individual, was cold-hearted, who killed any single person who wore like a turban over their head, because he was an extremely patriotic American citizen. No one tells these individuals that in order to be an American soldier, an American hero, you will eventually face PTSD. Governments want to hide these kinds of truths, because if you tell these individuals, these citizens, that to be a soldier means you will face PTSD, that means you will face repercussions from your actions, then no one will join the military, right? But the second level to this, the kind of financial incentives that the government provides to these individuals, right? Because like, for example, Obama, like he had this thing called the Veterans Act, right? He told like a lot of these veterans, like a lot of rural Americans who had some form of incentive to be a soldier. He told these individuals that if you were to join the American military, and you'll reap all these kinds of economic benefits, you'll get pension funds, you'll get the glorification, you'll get like medals of honor, right? What's the principal harm to this? Because we say people opt into being a soldier without thinking about what actually happens after the war. So no one thinks about like how, like if you were to lose a limb in that war, what will happen, or even if the government will even pay pay for these kinds of fees in the first place. And we say that people like Obama, especially Obama, who claimed to be a liberal, but was even like one of the most pro-war presidents, who told these individuals that, hey, that told these individuals that if you come back from war, then we will glorify you. These are kinds of harmful narratives that will eventually harm these people who are on the fence who are on the fence on becoming a soldier or not becoming a soldier. So the second substantive, how it actually creates a bad incentive for poor people, right? Because the first level to this is the incentive. So how does this incentive for poor people actually look like? So for example, if you were to be a poor individual from Mississippi and there was like a military training base near your house, then the government continuously tells you that to be a soldier is to be a good person. So you are more likely to send your children to these military training camps so that you can reap the benefits as a patriotic American citizen, and you also get all these kinds of like financial incentives that I tried to talk to you about. Second level, what actually happens when these soldiers die or like they sustain severe injuries, right? This is where all the tangible harms actually happen. Number one, you have less of a person to sustain your family, because no family, especially like people who are influenced by glorification, these are the kinds of families who don't actually consider what will happen to their families, to their child when their child die in these kinds of wars, right? And the second harm to this is, even if these families are traumatized, they are forced to reconcile with their identity. They have to continuously relive that trauma and tell themselves that, hey, my son died because he fought in a war, and that's something noble. So you continue this cycle of glorification, and it will never end unless someone actually tells these individuals that war is bad and being a soldier has a lot of repercussions. Third substantive coming from our side, how it also harms veterans, right? Because even in their best case, even if you were to tell us that veterans survive, they don't lose a limb and they come back with like perfectly like healthy emotional levels, right? We put to you that the harm still exists. What kind of harms are there? Number one, people who come back without like limbs, or like people who have to relive the trauma, right? Because like even if you give them a lot of grants, even if you give them the Medal of Honor, no Medal of Honor can ever help you relive that trauma. So a lot of these veterans secondly, like a lot of these veterans who are told by Obama that they're going to reap these kinds of like financial benefits, they're going to get like pension funds. All these kinds of people are the most these are the kinds of individuals who are most severely affected by these kinds of policies that tell them to be a soldier is to be a person who reap these kinds of benefits. But the fourth substantive and the most important one, how it continues to fuel a never-ending cycle of war. The first level to this is, how does this premise look like? Because we see like so many conflicts around the world, like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict or like the US invasion in Iraq, like actually happened because of like the romanticization of the ideals of being a soldier and the ideals of war, right? So how does this romanticization in this specific substantive look like, right? Because you tell American citizens that you must fight that Islamic terrorists, you must always retaliate against these individuals. If you are in that conflict, then you cannot retreat, because retreating and not fighting against these people is the ultimate betrayal to your country, right? Second level, the consequences of war and how there's less accountability, right? Because when all of your citizens and all of your politicians are influenced by the fact that are influenced by glorification, who tell these individuals that it's that soldiers are like the most noble person in like all of society, right? That means you are less likely to have a check and balance system into actually examining and actually scrutinizing what happens in wars and what actually happens to soldiers. We are the side who believes that soldiers should not be seen as saints, but seen as every other human being out there who will eventually face repercussions. That is
Sir Chair, in a world where every day soldiers put themselves in danger, they are ready to sacrifice their lives for the sake of their country, we as the opposition side see that it is inherently valid to glorify soldiers, right? Okay, so before I proceed to any arguments, let me first start off with some rebuttals, right? Okay, so government comes in here in this debate telling us that soldiers are murderers. They promote war and violence and killing people, right? But we as negative bench see that this isn't inherently true, right? Because okay, let's really see what soldiers are, right? Soldiers are people who signed up to fight for their country. They're the people who work hard every day, who are willing to sacrifice their lives just so that their country and their people remain safe, right? What government side are characterizing are maybe invaders or terrorists, or inherently people who aren't exactly soldiers, right? They're people who lost any moral judgment, and they start invading random places and killing innocent people, because that isn't what soldiers are, right? Soldiers are people who want to defend. They don't really want to kill people, because that isn't their motive, is it? They want to protect their country, they want to protect their citizens, right? Okay, next rebuttal, right? Government PM said that the government is concealing the actual what really happens in war. That they're concealing what happens and the maybe risks of getting PTSD and things like that. But we see that okay, what about that, right? The government isn't exactly concealing anything. It's not like these people are completely stupid and don't understand what they're getting themselves into, right? And even so, how is glorification related to this, right? And no, after my rebuttals. And even so, if they do get PTSD, if they do result in getting injured, what do you want them to do? Do you want, okay, we're not going to glorify you, we're not going to give you praise, we're not going to give you thanks for things that you do, for sacrificing your life, for sacrificing parts of yourself? After my rebuttals. Alright, and so what we as the whole negative bench got from PM's speech is that he was just defending, oh yeah, you know, soldiers promote this bad thing, soldiers promote war and things. And what we got from that is that, oh, okay, so what, you don't want them to be soldiers? Because inherently, getting rid of the glorification of soldiers won't really mitigate any of the harms on your side, but instead will create more harms, which will be later explained in my arguments. Oh yeah, one very, very important thing that I got from the PMC is that when you go into war, and let's say you get back, but you're with an injury, or you suffer from PTSD, or you lose a limb, or something like that, right? You are less of a person to sustain your family. What does that promote? That is not an idea that we promote in society. When you come back from a war, when you lose a limb, lose an arm, lose a leg, we're going to praise you, we're going to glorify you, because that's what you deserve. You deserve to be thanks and praised for putting yourself on the line, putting your life on the line, just for the sake of your country, right? For the sake of people you might not even know. I said after my rebuttals. And yeah, okay. So for my arguments.
Oh yeah. So if on your side people think that they will have praise, so what about individuals who have yet to realize that these kinds of repercussions will happen in the war? So how do you deal with these kinds of people?
Okay, so soldiers go through intensive training, right? It's not like the government, it's not like the military is just like, oh yeah, you can be a soldier, you can be a soldier, you can be a soldier. Obviously, these people are going to be informed of the risks of being a soldier, right? It's not like they're completely oblivious to what happens in war. And even so, they're going to be informed of this, because they're going to have to sign contracts, they're going to have to sign agreements, and make an inherent bond between them and the state, right? Okay, so now that answered that point, let's move on to my arguments, right? Okay, first argument. Soldiers are inherently good people, right? I've already told you what soldiers actually are. Soldiers are heroes. They're the people who defend their country. They don't want to kill people. They just want to protect people they want to protect the citizens of their country from being killed, right? And they know what comes with being a soldier, right? They know the risks. And because they know the risks, because they know that maybe one day they might not be able to get back to their family. Maybe one day they're gonna lose both their arms or a leg. Maybe one day they're gonna end up blind. They still want to go out there. They still want to protect their country because they're good people. They're good people. And why would you glorify these people? Because they are inherently sacrificing themselves for people they might not even know. And when they do this, don't you think they deserve at least a little praise? If you are saying no, soldiers shouldn't be praised at all. What are you gonna do? You're just gonna let them fight their wars. You're gonna let them come back into the country, and for what, right? They're not even gonna be thanked for their job. They're not even gonna be thanked for putting themselves on the line, right? Okay, yeah. Second argument. When soldiers protect their country, right? And they and this leads to like safety around the country, and the safety leads to the development. Okay, yeah. So it seems confusing at first, but let me expand on this, right? Okay, so when you're a soldier, right, you fight your wars, you go into battle, and you come back to the country maybe after your war is done, or you're on break or something, right? And then you get all this praise. You're like, everyone's like, oh, thank you for doing your job, thank you for helping and protecting your country, right? Then you happily feel, oh, I did a good job. I like this feeling of being praised. I'm happy to help my country, which then incentivizes the soldier to do more, to do a better job, and to actually continue fighting for the country, right? And when this happens, people inherently feel safe. They're like, oh, we have these great soldiers, we have these great people defending us from people who want to invade us, people who want to kill us, and we feel safe. Therefore, this safety, this lack of paranoia, because they know that they're safe, leads to development. Imagine without this glorification, soldiers would then be less incentivized to do their job, because they're like, oh, we're not even going to be thanked for putting our lives on the line anyway. Why should we do it in the first place, right? So they're less incentivized to do this, and people, okay, one day, country starts to invade your country, right? And your soldiers are like, oh, we're not going to be thanked anyway, you know. They're going to be like, oh, I don't want to do this. They're just going to do it like half-heartedly. They're doing it because they want to survive, but not doing it efficiently enough, right? And when this happens, what happens to the people, right? They're scared, they're paranoid. Oh, we don't have enough protection, blah, blah, blah. And it just creates a sense of paranoia around the country, right? They're like, and so they're caught up in a little shell. They're caught up in their lives, where, oh, we could be killed at any second just because the soldiers weren't glorified, because they don't want to do their job anymore, right? And when this paranoia takes over the country, what happens? Obviously, you're not going to develop anymore. The country is going to be left to rot in the dust, and everything's just going to implode, simply because soldiers are not incentivized to fight anymore, because what do they get in return, right? Yeah, so this will further be expanded by my DLO. And before I finish, let me first conclude that I told you in this debate, right? Number one, I have told you why soldiers inherently are good people and should be glorified. Number two, I have told you the harms of the lack of glorification of soldiers. And number three, I have told you why being a soldier is a hard job, and why inherently it is very important to glorify these people, and that is why I couldn't be more proud to oppose.
Right, we have to speak about the speech, and now invite the second block.
We think that most of what was argued on behalf of side opposition was very conveniently painted. Because they wanted to argue how, soldiers wouldn't do anything and how soldiers wouldn't be there. And then they wanted to come up with this very funny argument how without soldiers, countries would rot. We don't get how this works, because like, if anything, the moment soldiers are there, war takes place, and because post-war reconstruction does not happen on such a large scale and large speeds, that is when your country is more likely to rot. If anything, we think soldiers are the people who actually promote the country to rot, even in the name where they are fighting for the country's independence, right? We don't think it's necessary for the soldier to fight for independence, given that the other party also does not have a soldier. Which means that at the end of the day, given that both sides do not have soldiers, the ultimate thing that will then happen is people resort to diplomatic relationships. So even if they want to argue to us, on a government there will be less soldiers, we don't think there's ever a harm. So this is how I'm going to run my speech. So before I give you an argument on how people on the fence can never make informed choices, I'll give you a few rebuttals first. So firstly, they wanted to argue how soldiers are all good. we didn't want them to take, we don't want them to make it very convenient for them. So we give you examples like how the Israeli soldiers continue to bash upon Palestinian people, even though they know Palestinian people never actually perpetrated any form of harm that like triggered their independence, right? That threatened them as an individual. We don't think it's reasonable within the circumstances for you to argue that soldiers are all good. But even if soldiers are all good, right? We don't think the necessity for soldiers would ever exist, given that like we think that because of the glorification of what these soldiers should be, we think that because of that, like harms of romanticization takes place. You argue how, you prove how a soldier is the best person, is the bastion of defense if you romanticize him in such ways, and this is extremely harmful. I'll give you that later in my arguments. Secondly, then they wanted to argue how praising people on the ground who put themselves on the line is a good thing. We don't think so. Why? Because the more you promote these people, the more you praise these people, you promote for more soldiers to be there. You promoting more soldiers to be there is you essentially promoting more war. We don't think this should be right. It should be the case in like a very liberal, a very progressive world that we want to fight for. So we don't think soldiers come in these cases. So, but praising only encourages even more people to sacrifice themselves. So they need to justify to us why you glorifying only the good bastion-like aspects of being a soldier is such a good thing. Number three, how they wanted to argue how, so there was this principal contradiction, right? They wanted to argue how the moment you glorify people, soldiers will do even more. And then they wanted, later on, she wanted to argue how, oh, the moment you don't glorify soldiers enough, they would not want to do anything. So yeah, let's engage on the first premise. We think that soldiers can contribute even without having to be soldiers in the first place. If you want to make sure that your people on the ground are safe, you don't have to carry a gun and run around and shoot people who do petty theft, right? We don't think this is necessary, but even if that takes place, we think there are already police who already do a great job at it. We don't need soldiers within these circumstances. Number four, when you wanted to argue how soldiers don't want to do anything anymore, we don't think a country, like I've told you, we don't think a country would rot when soldiers don't exist. But before I move on to arguments, sure.
So if you don't want people running around on the ground with guns shooting people, then why would you have police running around on the ground with guns shooting people? It's the same thing. It's just essentially inside the country and outside the country defense.
Okay, so here's the distinction, right? You have police who are rational people who decide whether to shoot or not, or whether to like kill that person or not, whether it's necessary or not. But when you're in a war, all you do is listen to people who give you instructions. So if anything, you only follow instructions given to you. So you don't give any room for people to rationalize whether or not to kill that person. So we think within these circumstances is you essentially are promoting irrational acts of people even if it's not justified. So our first argument, the one argument coming from my speech on how people on defense can't make informed choices the moment you continue to glorify what it means to be a soldier. Why? Because glorification is essentially you only talking about the good aspects and the perks of being a soldier, like post-retirement benefits, and how you'll be assumed as a noble person, right? So we think that within these circumstances, no one actually talks about what are the repercussions of you being a soldier. No one talks about the PTSD that people go through after war. No one talks about the brutal things that happen within wars. This is why it's extremely harmful, and it boils down to two effects. Firstly, a lot of poor communities and other people are coerced into becoming soldiers without even completely understanding the repercussion of being a soldier. And why is this mutually exclusive to poor communities? Because poor communities are the people who need the most benefit out of any career they opt into, right? So we think that the more the state continues to tell these people, oh, you being a soldier is you being a great person. You being a soldier, you get a lot of post-retirement benefits. We think that you get quarters and all that, right? These are things that poor people are coerced into doing without actually knowing what is the flip side of the benefits that exist, you being a soldier. Secondly, through glorification, we think romanticization of what it means to be a perfect soldier also takes place. So this is because everyone only talks about the good aspects of being a soldier, right? So the narrative that then exists within society is that a soldier is a person who sacrificed himself for the country at any circumstance, and a person, and every move that soldier makes is always justified because he's always doing it in the best interest of the country. Just why it's very, very harmful, right? Firstly, many young soldiers believe that it's their moral obligation to sacrifice themselves for their country, even in circumstances where those sacrifices were not necessary. So we tell you that none of these soldiers actually want to rationalize or can rationalize whether that sacrifice is reasonable or not. No one talks about whether that sacrifice is even important for you to make sure the people on the ground in your country back at home are safe or not. We think that within these circumstances, these soldiers die in vain because of the emphasis of patriotism that exists because of glorification. people on the ground always talk about how being a soldier is noble. None of us would ever want to go to war and carry AK-47 shooting at people. But what we would do, we encourage those soldiers who are there to go and fight on our behalf. If anything, we think that we are the most selfish people within the circumstances because we expect other people to die on behalf of us. We think that glorification is even more harmful because what happens then? You encourage even more soldiers to die on the battlefield. We don't want that to happen. We know that they also have their families. We don't want them to die even if they make these choices. That is why we tell you that they are making informed choices. Uninformed choices is that much more harmful. Secondly, soldiers who face many emotional and traumatic incidents are assumed as noble people, right? So even if they face a lot of repercussions like PTSD and traumatic incidents, they are told not to go out and seek for help. Why? Because these people are assumed as the most manly creatures out there. They're the most manly figures out there. These people are assumed as the most strongest, most fittest people emotionally and physically. Therefore, what will happen after that? Which means that you tell your soldier that he needs to be strong even if he's affected by it. You tell your soldier that even if he doesn't feel like wanting to go to a war anymore, he still needs to, because it's his moral obligation that we as a state, we as people on the ground push onto him. We think that we are very selfish within the circumstances. Glorification only emphasizes and glorifies and magnifies his harm even more, right? So secondly, and post-war, a lot of soldiers can't sleep at night. A lot of these soldiers suffer to live a normal life in comparison to other individuals. So why is this so harmful? Because no medal of honor can ever treat the kind of psychological effect these people go through. Hence, glorification will only encourage these people to sacrifice more without ever getting any benefit. So a lot of these things are very harmful. Given that we as people on the ground are very selfish, we shouldn't emphasize on these people punishing soldiers even more just because they chose to be soldiers. We don't think it's fair for us to punish these people by glorifying what it means for you to be the perfect soldier in order for you to be the bastion of goodness. And for all those reasons, I've never been proud of it.
I just like to speak about this speech and I get a position.
Okay, thank you.
Sir Chair, government is starting to paint this debate if soldiers should even be there. First, they told us that they are the cause of war. Second, they told us that it will influence people because they get this sort of glorification and it will influence people to join wars. And third, he said that it will make the country rot or it will affect the country very much. So what they're trying to already paint is even if soldiers should be there, they just started saying what do soldiers he just started saying on why there shouldn't be soldiers, what do soldiers do, and he starts saying that soldiers shouldn't even be like that. Okay, now next to a few rebuttals. So from PM, they told us that they don't want to have this sort of war and that because soldiers caused this war, but we tell you that if you continue, soldiers are not the cause of war. They're the ones who protect the people because of this conflict that happened, which started the war. So that is inherently invalid. Okay, that is invalid, okay. And also, violence is the cause of war because of this conflict that is happening between these nations. Okay, second, after my rebuttals, second, he said that DPM's argument was saying that they can't make informed decisions because they don't know what soldiers do. They don't the people don't even know what they're getting into. But we tell you that's not true. We tell you that people know how hard soldiers work. We tell you that they know how much the soldiers are trying to protect them from terrorists that are inside of their country. And we tell you that these soldiers, when you see them that they have broken limbs, when they're injured in something, it's because that they fought for the war and they know how much that these soldiers care about their country. Okay, second, second argument. So they told us that if we continue to like praise these soldiers, it will just make people not, I will go to, I will become a soldier because I want to get that glorification without even knowing what a soldier is. But we tell you that everyone knows what a soldier, how hard a soldier works and how hard it is to sacrifice his life or her life. And also, he said that, it's gonna create this sort of like trauma to the soldiers, and that's going to like, but we tell you, if you say that the problem is just that there's going to be trauma, we tell you that this glorification is what will help them actually pick up themselves from that trauma and to actually see that they did something that has helped the country. Okay, now I'll go to my argument. First, after my first argument. Okay, so first, we tell you that nationalism or their love for their country will incentivize these soldiers to actually work harder to keep working for their country. Okay, first, nationalism, the love for their country, because people actually appreciate what they do, and actually, and that this is like making them. Because if we don't glorify these soldiers, it will make them think that their country doesn't even appreciate what they did. So this is gonna create this sort of like ignorance to what is actually happening to their country. And we tell you that in status quo, but people are more inspired to do their job when they're given this praise, because we tell you that they'll keep wanting to actually get that love for their country, that experience that actually what they sacrificed for was worth it, and that also that they'll want to, that praise is going to be used for that for their motivation, because we tell you that there is it's the feeling that they get that somebody actually appreciates them, which will make them even work harder. And also, so if we give the praise, it will make them want to do more things for the betterment of their society, because they want these people to actually to see that they actually appreciate all of the praises. And even if we tell you that some soldiers don't really deserve this praise, we tell you that it's the guilt that these soldiers actually feel. And we tell you also that really all soldiers have to like live to serve, like they have to keep on working hard for the country in order for them to survive. And also okay, so we tell you that when we they're trying to paint that they told us that if more people join this or more people become a soldier, that it is harmful. But we tell you it's not, because as my PM has stated that when we have we tell you that if we have more people wanting to be a soldier, there are more people who will actually have this love for their country, and that's they're going to and because of that praise that they get, it's going to give them more motivation aside from them just doing it just for the sake of like that praise. Okay.
On that point, Iraq actually suffered because American soldiers who invaded Iraq thought they were doing a great job at saving Iraqis. So simple question: are soldiers mobile?
Okay, hold on. Okay, so wait, I'll be explaining that in my second argument. So basically, if you continue, if you are glorified, we get like better armies, and also that we have more people who will actually be the ones to do this, not only for the sake of the praise, but also because they have this appreciation. And okay, second argument, answering his point, we are going to weigh or like differentiate these soldiers. What really is a soldier? So soldier are those whose intent is to basically like protect their own country, and it's different from these soldiers who have like malicious intent to just start killing like innocent people, and that we tell you that soldiers, when they want to protect their country and their job, and this is like they, as much as possible, they save they avoid these innocent people, even if they're from the other side, from getting harmed, because their goal is to make sure that they actually that they stop all of these terrorists that are creating like this harm to the whole society. Okay, and so going back to my rebuttal, when I told you that they don't know what to do as a soldier, I will be turning that as something for that it's beneficial to our side actually. So when we have when we glorify all of these soldiers, then people are more aware of what soldiers actually do. That these soldiers are being glorified because they have either that they have sacrificed, they have been harmed, and like that thought that they're not going to be able to survive is always haunting them, and that will make the people aware that these soldiers, that we should glorify all of these soldiers because they have done something for the country, and that it's not that easy to become a soldier, to accept the job as a soldier. And we tell you that opposition side wins this debate because first, these soldiers are not these soldiers that have malicious intent is different from these soldiers who which is the real meaning of soldiers, to protect their country and save all of the innocent people. And second, that we create more we incentivize the people to work better as soldiers and also to become soldiers. Thank you.
And now to end legal subject for the government side, invited David.
A soldier isn't someone who only protects their country. They are people who protect a country's interests. And I think that was very convenient that opposition wanted to harp on the fact that they are able to justify the glorification of soldiers as patriotism, because recognize that patriotism in general itself is bad in a lot of circumstances, especially to soldiers, because most of the time it's in an indoctrinated form of patriotism. They are thought ever since the beginning itself that everyone that they're fighting against is only their enemy, and therefore they should only protect their country's interests, right? So firstly, I have two issues in today's debate. Which side has a better military for the country, and the second issue is on how we protect, which side better protects soldiers and better caters to soldiers itself. So first issue, right? Because the opposition wanted to argue that we disincentivize soldiers from entering the profession because we don't want governments to coerce them, right? We tell you it's not a bad thing because you're principally against soldiers who are coerced by the benefits. We don't want governments to go to poor communities and tell them that you should become soldiers because of the benefits that you get, because of the benefits that your family get. We prefer a world where we have soldiers who opt in because of their actual feelings about becoming a soldier and they're not coerced. That's the kind of world that we want. And on government, we think we allow people to opt in with a better and more informed choice when coercion doesn't exist, right? They know the kind of harm that they face and they understand it. And we also think that on our side, we don't give the ability for white governments to go and exploit poor black communities and make them become soldiers just because, so that they can get more welfare, so that they can get more benefits. So we think that even though a country might have less soldiers, we think that that is much better than having soldiers who are coerced into becoming a soldier, not knowing the harms that they're going to face, and therefore are much more marginalized as a whole. On the second issue, on which side better protects soldiers on its own, because they wanted to talk about how soldiers are people who only want to defend the country and therefore should be glorified because they deserve it and are good people. A few responses. Firstly, we reject the premise as a whole that they're always good people, because under opposition's paradigm, you force them to fit into the narrative that they have to be the perfect patriotic soldier, that they need to be. That's when Puvan's argument really materializes. That's when they become much more irrational, and that's why the example of POX POI, when he said that how when American soldiers thought they were doing a great thing by actually harming all these innocent civilians, we don't think that's something that's justifiable as just patriotism. That's something that we should take into consideration. And also, we also wanted to talk about how glorification is good because of the fact that when these people actually come back, they're going to get like thank yous and appreciation. We tell you in reality, that's not how it works. People are more likely to appreciate the strategies or the white people in the boardroom who's making the actual decisions, rather than the people on the ground losing their limbs, or the people on the ground who are losing their lives and getting trauma from war, right? But we tell you on a second level, even if this appreciation exists, we still think that's something that we would rather trade off, because it doesn't really help solve the problems that soldiers face as an individual. Someone saying thank you to them doesn't help them solve the trauma that they face, because every night they cannot sleep because they have the image of the war in their mind. And we tell you, on opposition, how do we actually solve this problem, right? Because we don't disenfranchise poor communities that are coerced, because this is the distinction. Poor people are now financially incentivized and to actually become soldiers, and like other people are more incentivized by their feelings about becoming a soldier. Therefore, we think that it's important to recognize that even if they are good people and they only want to defend the country, oftentimes they're always coerced by the benefits itself. And we also think that the fact that they wanted to argue that we're against soldiers is something that we find a bit odd, because we're not against soldiers. We think that soldiers are important, they're the pillars of a country's military system, but we don't think it's justifiable for governments to actually use the glorification of soldiers in order to coerce individuals into becoming soldiers in order to protect the country's interests on its own. And we think that the form of patriotism that exists under your side is very vague. And I think it's very convenient that you wanted to only characterize soldiers as very good and very important people, right? Because understand that when you want to argue that they're only good people, it's more likely like because they're good people and because they actually want to become the best soldier that they can ever be, they want to protect the country as much as they can. That's when they're more likely to be irrational. That's when they're more likely to bomb civilians, right? That's the reason why things like the Nanjing raid happened, because of how these Japanese people were so committed to actually serving their country that they thought all these Chinese people were their enemies. They could perform all sorts of atrocities and all of these sorts of atrocities to these people, and you don't think that's justified, and think that glorification is these kind of that. And when you talk about like different beliefs and beliefs and fighters, right? A lot of these beliefs, whatever. But soldiers is something that's not more than the characteristics that they so we think that the glorification of use of police and the glorification of something that's changing different. So that's what's opposition is, right? Because understand when you want that these people in their best case, right? Yeah, sure, we agree. We might have a lot more soldiers, but we think that all these coerced soldiers into becoming sometimes don't necessarily get the benefit that they come back, right? They don't get the same form of glorification and appreciation that they wanted to when they joined the army. And right, and also number two, we think even under their best case scenario, these people still have to face a lot of other. We think that it's morally abhorrent that under their best case that these people have to perform all sorts of atrocities and have to lose their friends and their families in the name of patriotism itself. But even in our worst case scenario, yeah, we tell you that we may not be able to solve a lot of conflicts and wars. We may not be able to. We may we may not be able to have like a really large military base, but we tell you that every soldier that we have is a much more dedicated and a much more important soldier and a much more informed soldier, and that's more important. And number two, we don't just get people to join in wars. We don't get people to just become military soldiers to strengthen our military base, because we think that that endorses wars, and that's why it's very important. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the girl. Now then, the substantive right there on here.
Sir Chair, when a person readily submits themselves to the damages of war, there is little to no reason that that person is not to be glorified. And government here has failed to properly describe their their worldview, has failed to properly show us how their world looks like, and and isn't able to give us any clear reason why not to glorify them, which I will prove later. So first, to resolve some First, to start with some rebuttals, what the government whip said about then it isn't justified to use glorification to coerce soldiers to coerce people into becoming soldiers. Okay, conceded. It's not justifiable to use glorification to coerce people into becoming soldiers. But that isn't what this debate is about, is it? No, this debate is completely about regretting the actual glorification of soldiers as a whole. The motion didn't say this House regrets the use of glorification in coercion of people. No, it said that this House regrets the glorification of soldiers, and they're not debating in the spirit of the motion, because the entire case has been about the harms of this glorification being used in coercing people. But that's about the only solid harm that they actually gave us today. Now sit down. Okay, so next they have a next rebuttal. They have a contradiction where they want a world where people aren't coerced into becoming soldiers, and yet they completely denounce any benefits that we give them about being a soldier. To them, there is no benefit to being a soldier whatsoever for some reason that, and they keep denying all of the benefits that we've stated. But they want soldiers to be there. They claim that it hurts the people psychologically, physically, and it reduces them and reduces their capability to sustain their families. And yet they want soldiers. They want people to become soldiers. How are they supposed to argue for that when they well, that is a clear contradiction in their case, and you can't regret soldiers being glorified without regretting soldiers at all, because glorifying soldiers means glorifying their actions, and if you're not glorifying their actions, then you're not glorifying the soldiers. You're regretting the soldiers, right? But they still want soldiers to be part of that, which means that they're actively glorifying soldiers by acknowledging that they're important in the military, that they're the structure of the military, right? So next, the characterization of the soldier that the Prime Minister gave a while ago as the leading actors of war is incorrect, because they're not the leading actors of war. They correctly stated a while ago that these soldiers are just controlled by their government, are just following orders from their government. But they forgot the fact that these soldiers, the military, can secede control from the government in times when the government completely forgets about the inherent best interest of the people. And the military, okay, there are negative effects to it. But patriotism has some negative effects. But do you really want to leave your country defenseless without any soldiers whatsoever in the event of attack? I think not. And their whole point about patriotism being bad is not completely valid, because although patriotism may lead to some radicalism in some form, it isn't that widespread. And contrary to what government told us, although the soldiers promote a sense of patriotism, it is not sensible to assume that people immediately flock to the idea of being a perfect soldier the moment you say the word patriotism, right? And some more rebuttals, like they believe that they have a less of a person to sustain their family, that these soldiers have families too. Well, guess what? If they're not a soldier, if you're not there to protect your country, then your country is going to get invaded, your country is going to get bombed, your country is going to be attacked by terrorist groups and such, and your family won't be there anymore. So if you go back from the war and your family is dead, what family are you there to sustain? What family are you there to protect? Yes?
You need to prove to me how our regretting of glorification is only mutually exclusive to one country on the planet.
Okay, it's not mutually exclusive to one country on the planet, but the harms that I'm presenting to you right now about your regretting of glorification applies to generally a lot of different countries, right? It's not, there are some isolated cases, yes, like Iraq, for example, that point about Iraq being suffering after American soldiers entered there, right? There are isolated cases that, yes, we need to improve it. Like I said, I conceded that there are some negative effects, but you can't really outweigh that compared to the benefits that you receive, that we've proven to you, no, sit down, that we've proven to you, you get from when you have soldiers, right? So moving on to some issues, I have two issues for you today. Number one, which side creates more incentive for people to defend their country? And number two, which side has a world where the people are prioritized and protected? Because first of all, the important actors in this debate are, yes, the soldiers, the people, and the state. But the most important actor in this debate, the most effective actor in this debate, is the people inherently. Because without these soldiers, without the state, obviously these people are going to be a country, they're going to be a nation. Not specifically any country, but these people are going to be defenseless without the soldiers. And we've proven to you how regretting the glorification of soldiers eventually leads to the lack of soldiers, because people don't believe that they're important. People don't believe that they should be glorified, right? And the Prime Minister has already discussed that in detail. And as we've proven, the sense of nationalism and pride that the people receive incentivizes more people to become soldiers. Like what we said, patriotism coerces them into becoming soldiers. And we don't see that as inherently a bad thing, although there may be some negative effects. It isn't inherently a bad thing, and those effects are mitigable, right? And my LO talked about the harms of not glorifying them, leading to a defenseless country. And the government is essentially leaving the people abandoned in any given state. They have no incentive for anybody to rise up and take the responsibility of protecting the interest of the state, right? And okay, a country may have an interest in another country of invading them, right? Again, military can seek control. And secondly, the military doesn't really, no country will invade another country without a valid reason unless they're knowingly committing acts that are similar to terrorism, right? That are similar to not like following the current regulations right now. And those are the people that we need soldiers to defend against. And when you're doing that kind of action, it's no longer honorable, it's no longer noble. And those people, they're not considered soldiers in our characterization of what a soldier is. So next issue, which has a world where the people of the state are prioritized and protected. So I talked about how the people are the most important actors and the most effective. Therefore, it's crucial to identify who has their best interest, right? Well, government may claim that by not glorifying soldiers to create a peaceful world where there is no war. The truth is, no, that doesn't happen. They haven't proven to us how they give us a world where no war happens. Even if you remove all of the soldiers from Earth, there are still people capable of handling weapons, right? You don't need to be a soldier to know how to use a handgun. You don't need to be a soldier to shoot somebody, kill them, commit acts of terrorism, no, sit down. You don't need to be a soldier to have improvised explosive devices to kill like multiple amounts of people at the same time, right? The point is, there is still people with their own incentives, with their own ulterior motives that are always going to be there to commit these acts of terrorism, these acts of war. There's still countries that even if they don't have soldiers, well, they have weapons like nuclear weapons. You need soldiers to be able to defend from that kind of threat. You need soldiers to be able to defend against the terrorism, to defend against countries that are threatening you with nuclear threats, right? The police may be effective in dealing with petty theft, with petty crime, but are the police effective from stopping Muslims from, not Muslims, but not Muslims, but stopping people from, stopping people from committing acts of terrorism, like the situation with the Ariana Grande concert, for example, or all of these things that are happening in London, right? No, the police wasn't effective in stopping that. And the police wasn't effective in stopping those actions, stopping those things from happening. And government fails to acknowledge that the people of the state are important in this debate. And even if their best case of defenseless, they still cut into development, productivity, nationalism, and so many other benefits that we gain from having soldiers. And for all of these reasons, opposition takes this debate, and I'm very proud to oppose.
I'd like to thank the speaker, and now to end the case beside opposition, invite third up.
The makings of the winning bench is simple, right? They must fulfill 3 standards. Number 1, how responsive they were. Number 2, the content of their speeches. And number 3, resolving deadlocks, right? Okay, first, responsiveness. Who engaged more in this debate, right? Okay, so we see that up on the standard because we were able to respond to pretty much the entirety of the points given by the affirmative side, such as the point on what about the soldiers who are like uninformed of all the risks that they take when they're signed up to be a soldier, right? We were already able to respond to this by telling you that obviously when you're gonna become a soldier, you go through screening, you go through interviews, you sign a contract, you have to read all the fine print, you have to be able to make this whole bond and actual legitimate paperwork, you know, with the state and the military. You don't just go into being a soldier like it's nothing, like you're walking into like school or something, right? Okay, next, we were also able to respond to the majority of their case, right? So for example, when we were able to describe why glorification is justified versus why they were saying that glorification, you know, just leads to an endless cycle of war and violence. We've already told you that actually the glorification of soldiers just incentivizes these people to work harder and do better in their job and to actually try to end the war instead of continuing the war, right? Because soldiers are therefore incentivized to continue doing their job better because they know that it's helping people, because they see the positive response they get, right? Okay. Yeah, so with all of this in mind, the fact that we were able to respond to their points and that we were able to pretty much respond to every point in their case, yeah, we see that opposition side takes this first standard. Okay, next, content. Who actually debated on what the motion actually means, right? Okay, so as already pointed out by opposition whip, government side mainly talked about actually why soldiers shouldn't exist in the first place. Even if they kind of already brushed on and you know why glorification is bad, we've already responded to that. But what we got from the main case was that, soldiers are inherently the cause of violence and war and they shouldn't exist and we should just resolve things diplomatically, which obviously, who doesn't want to resolve things diplomatically? Everyone wants to do that, right? But obviously, you know, that's in a perfect world. And we don't live in a perfect world. We live in a world where violence will always exist no matter what you do. You can't just attain world peace by eliminating the military. There's always going to be at least one country who's like, you know what, I want to bomb this country. And as long as that one country exists, violence will exist, which means all countries should be prepared, right? But that wasn't even what the motion was about. The motion was about why glorification was either why glorification of the soldiers should be regretted, or why glorification, you know, is actually a valid thing. And that's what opposition side already debated on. We already talked about why glorifying the soldier is principally justified, and why it actually helps soldiers and the majority. Even responding to their case that wasn't actually related to the motion. And my last standard, resolving deadlocks. There wasn't many deadlocks in the debate. Both sides were pretty responsive. But there was one deadlock, which is mainly, you know, what a soldier actually was, right? Government was like, soldiers are people that fight, kill, bam, you know, without any rational thinking. But we already characterize them as people who want to defend their country, who are acting on the part of the state, so that their country, their people, their fellow men wouldn't get hurt, right? And we were able to prove why our characterization was more inherently true than that of government side. And with all of these 3 standards in mind, you can clearly see that opposition side takes this debate.
I'd like to thank the speaker for the speech, and I'll be ending the debate. All government plan. Take care.
Number one, I'm really curious why side opposition decided to bring up new matter in their reply and whip speech. But even if that is the case, I'll try my best to engage on them anyways. So this characterization really needs to come out, guys. Soldiers are not good. We were talking about the bad aspects of soldiers and why they should not be justified. They only wanted to engage on how soldiers are always good people and that they'll never do like dodgy things, right? We think that within these circumstances, we can come to an understanding where soldiers are always subjective. They can be good people, they can be bad people. Irregardless, we'll tell you why our case still stands. So firstly, they wanted to argue how how we didn't want militaries. We concede. If it means that we cannot have military, we'd rather have it. But we live in a world where militaries already exist. Hence, because that applies to every other country out there, we say that we don't want to glorify the soldiers anymore. We'd rather have them the way we already have them. We don't want them to be glorified. If it means that we have a smaller military base, we'd much rather have it, because that is a much better alternative than what GOV stands for. They need to prove to us why giving every country more soldiers, if it's their best case, is going to solve conflicts. If anything, we tell you that even in our best case, even in our worst case, where we cannot completely mitigate the number of soldiers that exist within a military base, we cannot completely mitigate the number of conflicts that happen. If anything, given that your military base is smaller now, it's less likely for you to even go to conflicts in the first place. We don't want we don't want children and people to always think that picking up a gun is always better than picking up a pen to solve conflicts. We don't want this narrative anymore. We want to change that. We don't want soldiers to always be glorified. We don't want things like Tugu Negara to exist anymore, because that will always prove that soldiers were the ones that solved conflicts, not people who actually diplomatically solve problems. This is a very bad narrative. Why? Because now you actively coerce every person into aggressive ways of solving conflicts. If we told you this in all three of our speeches, they completely neglected it. They only wanted to turn our entire case about what soldiers look like and what soldiers do. But irregardless, we still engage on that. Anyways, so second issue coming from me, the whole comparison of words. So firstly, what would a world with glorification look like? We tell you that with glorification, that we need to get this distinction. Glorification is not something that exists after you become a soldier only. Glorification also exists before you become a soldier. That glorification will exist to every person on the ground. That is why we told you that soldiers make uninformed choices in the first place. They need to understand this characterization, right? You will never be able to completely opt out of the whole soldier system, the whole military system, given that your head of department there is always telling you, oh, be for America, oh, you need to work for your people, this is the nation's independence, you are a bastion of goodness, this is your moral obligation towards the country. These kind of things always will oppress that person, will always coerce that person into making the uninformed choice. We don't want that uninformed choice, we don't want uninformed choices anymore. We want people to make those decisions on a completely rational mind. We want people to actively make those decisions for themselves. If it means that that particular country has less soldiers, so be it. There is a much better alternative. Why? Because now those soldiers who actively make those choices based on what they truly want to be will now be able to cope with those PTSDs that we were talking about. They completely understand that these are effects of you going to war, and that they'll be more likely to want to face this kind of traumatic incidents as a whole, right? We think that this is much better. But regardless, a second thing that happens with glorification, because we don't argue how a lot of American soldiers go to Iraq and penetrate into their nation in the name of independence, in the name of them wanting to become very defensive figures. You go into you go into other nations and so-called protecting your country. We don't see why this is even justified in the first place. Hence why the more you glorify the soldiers, the more you justify this sort of acts. The more you say, oh, it's so good for America to go to Iraq and stop the war that was about to happen, or solve the conflicts that already took place. We think that within this circumstances, soldiers are the last person to ever solve conflicts. Because the only thing that soldiers will ever do is pick up guns and shoot at people instead of opting in for diplomatic ways of solving problems.
We would like to thank both teams, one for the great peace, cross shake and then